Good morning, guys. So today we're going to have another look at Bitcoin, see how it's going. So what are we seeing here? Well, first of all, before we go into all the detailed trend lines and RSI and all that, I really like to sometimes just sit back and look at the price action and nothing else. Not get too distracted. Okay, and the volume as well, sure. So what are we seeing here? Well, we saw a big move down, and now we're seeing some sort of consolidation, but which of course looks a lot like a bear flag. If we look at the candles here, just doing some price analysis candle, trying to tell what the story is. Let's just say we start from here. Okay, so we had an indecision candle coming off of the beginning of consolidation over here, from which we broke bullish with very solid volume. We had a small wick to the top. Then we had another indecision candle with yet another wick to the top. So this was a fairly bearish sign, but not terribly bearish. In any case, we did have some downside coming back from there. And since then, we've really just been, if we go to this candle, it's an inside bar over here. We had a fake out over here, small fake out over there, okay? And then a bit more indecision, kind of still staying within that range. And now we've broken the range. We're below the low of the previous candle. So not so much to say in the sense that it's mostly just going sideways right now. But the volume, of course, is decreasing. And usually this means that, we're waiting for that increase in volume so that we can see which direction the market wants to take us next. Naturally, we're in a bear market. This looks like a bear flag. One must admit that the momentum is for the bears here, okay? So if we look at now some more detailed analysis, oh, this is not the right one, sorry. Right, so this looks like a bit of a mess, but these are, I think, all the notable levels. So if we're looking at it purely from a, if we look at it from a bear perspective, we have, as I mentioned, this bear flag over here. This trend line is not, because it's only 1 hour time frame. Let's go to the 4 hour. Yeah, and for these videos, I'm generally going to be talking mostly about the higher time frames. Since I don't have that much experience trading on the shorter time frames, and the higher ones, of course, always have higher probability setups. So we can see quite a clear trend line over there with 1, 2, almost 3 touches. And here, this is one of those instances where it's like, okay, this trend line clearly is breaking through this, and I'm clearly just creating it in a way which makes it look better, right? Which makes it look clean. But the thing is that if you don't draw it here, then okay, you could, in theory, draw it here. And it doesn't matter all that much. Some people say, oh, it's extremely, you have to get the exact right trend line so you get the exact right, price point. I think this can be true, certainly if you have many clear points, like let's say we had 4 or 5 touches, and then, it would be weird to kind of be flexible with a trend line. But here, for example, is one of those points where it's like, I prefer instead to create a sort of zone. So we have a touch over here and a touch over there, okay? That would make 2 touches, but that isn't ideal because, okay, we bounced off from here, but this is like a fresh touch over here, so we may or may not bounce strongly from here. It may or may not be a notable touch. But if we, for example, do the opposite, where we say, okay, we only want points which have had significant bounces, in other words, these 2 over here, okay, big bounce up there, big bounce up there, then it starts looking more like this, yeah. And I like to look at these different potential how these can play out. So this is kind of the extreme scenario where, okay, we break this and then we come down and touch here, which is entirely possible, but there is no support all the way between 3,950 and 3,665. So you're basically saying, okay, well, if you're shorting here and you're taking profit here, either you're being conservative, which is fair enough, or you're saying that this trend line over here with these 2 touches is more significant than this horizontal trend line over here, all right? And now, in general, horizontal trend lines are much more significant and noteworthy than diagonal ones. So that's why I personally, although it's interesting to keep this in mind, and if we bounce off of here, then of course it will look great in hindsight, I think the probability favors the bears coming down all the way to here if we break this level, okay? So that's why I like to, sometimes I'll really just kind of break, and if you see Philicon's videos, he does something similar, you know. Sometimes in one of his videos he said it's like it's extremely important to draw the trend lines very accurately, and then sometimes you'll just see him randomly draw a line which is going like right through these and like this kind of thing, you know. And yeah, it's an art, not a science, right? I'm going to draw it something like this. Okay, we have a touch here, touch there, and this of course goes in line with our 4,000 zone over here. So what are we looking at in terms of support and resistance? Well, honestly, if I had to enter a position now, it would be a bullish entry for the simple reason that the risk to reward ratio here, if we do a long position, 4050, we're looking at the next significant resistance. Well, here we have the horizontal line over here at the 4376, but we also have this downtrending resistance line, the diagonal, which has 1, 2, 3 touches, okay, compared to this resistance, which has 1, 2 over here, these 2 wicks. So I think this is fairly significant resistance as well. So if I were longing here, I would certainly be interested in taking some profit around the 4,300 level. And as you see, this also has confluence with this small high over here, okay? And breaking this high would, of course, break the bearish 4-hour pattern. So we have high, lower, low. Sorry, we have high, low, lower, low. So breaking this would be fairly significant. And as I said, if we came up here around here, this would be certainly a good profit target. If we were going more sort of sideways, well, then, and let's say, for example, we long here and it goes up and down, all of a sudden, this resistance becomes much less significant. Why? Because we're bouncing between within this triangle, up and down, and the closer we get to the apex, of course, which is over here, by the way, the more spring we'll have, let's say, to go into one direction or the other, making previous resistances and supports less and less significant. So it's certainly an interesting idea to get in long here. Let's see, for example, we would have, and of course, the reason why it's pretty not such a bad idea is that the risk to reward ratio is pretty high. Okay, so I mean, it's decent. This is kind of the general minimum which I will go for if I'm entering a new position, 2.5 risk to reward. And this, of course, is fairly conservative. This is assuming that, you know, we touch over there and then, you know, we want to take profit. But Philicon, for example, I saw in his video today, he's reaching for the skies at 4.8, and that's fair enough. You know, he's got his Elliott wave thing going on, and he's saying that, well, he expects that. I mean, I personally, I think that's a little optimistic, because what does that mean? Longing here and taking profit there, it means that we would have to, first of all, break out of this apex bullish, okay, which we haven't. We're just on the sort of support of this apex, of this triangle. And it would also mean, of course, that we have to break this resistance and the much more notable 4,500 resistance. So yeah, it's absolutely possible. And certainly we could see this trend line being reached again, potentially up there. But this would also mean on the 4-hour crossing the 55 EMA. So we would basically be breaking through all of these EMAs to get up there. And even on the daily, let's have a look, to reach 4.8. Yeah, so we have this 13 EMA, which we've been grinding on. Sorry, it's not very clear here because of all this other stuff here. But we've been grinding here once and once. So going up to 48 would mean not only breaking that, but also breaking this. So I think it's a little optimistic. That's why I don't generally I wouldn't say, hey, this is an amazing risk to reward. We got 8 to 1. I'm not sure actually what Filecoin's risk to reward ratio was exactly, but that's besides the point. If I were longing here, I would kind of go around this region. And of course, the thing about trading is that as the markets move, you get more and more information, and then you might change your decision. But in any case, our short position entered at an average price of 4,350, I think, is doing quite okay. And there's certainly some argument for actually taking profit here, for the simple reason that that we are at a sort of support level at this 4,000, and what else? And that, of course, we can still consider a bearish scenario whereby we go up here and we face this resistance, and we can, short more over there. So we get back into our short position, or sorry, get back, what's the word? We get back to the original. So let's say we have $50 short, which is what we have right now, right? We could, for example, take $15 profit here. Actually, I think that's quite reasonable. Yeah, that we take a profit here, and then if it breaks here, we may even have a stop. Yeah, well, that's what we'll do. We'll have a stop limit over here. So if we break this, we will have a stop limit sell. Okay. We will buy over here for about $15. Let's see, what's the price? 4,045. All right, $15. And then if we get up to this, towards the top of this triangle, we will actually add more to the short, because long term we're still looking bearish. And if we break out of this, well, we will see how that plays out. But certainly, let's say we do something like this: we go up here and we come down here, and then we break out through here with volume. Yeah, that's probably gonna be a pretty good sign to want to come out of the short in anticipation of at the very least reaching this range over here, and potentially even reaching that range. But until then, the momentum still favors the the bears, and there's no reason to get out of most of our position. You know what? Let's make it $20. So or even 25, because this does seem like a pretty good level to, as I mentioned, for the previous reasons. It's not like, hey, we're giving up on the position. We're just saying, well, long term our position still looks great, but short term we have a very good opportunity to get a better price for our position, maybe even enter a larger position, increase the size of the position if we should reach this level of resistance over here. And B, even although we're reducing our position here, and the market continues going in the way we initially wanted it to, which is down, which sounds pretty evil. It's really not fun to short a market, to be honest, but there you go. If that's what we're looking for, then we can still re-enter that position, and fairly confidently knowing that if we break this level, that we've broken this resistance over here, this horizontal resistance, which is more important, I think, than this diagonal trend line, but also that in some ways of interpreting this trend line, that we would have broken that as well. So we'll take a $25 profit here, or rather at a $25 buy here, see how that changes our average position. And I would also want to have a quick look at some other coins here. So, because I'm considering other shorts, actually for my personal portfolio as well. And oops, got all these lines coming up here. Let's take this out. Right, so we're looking at XRP here. Wow, that's annoying. Blech. So we're looking at XRP here. Let's go first of all to the daily. And what I like about shorting this, as opposed to, for example, Bitcoin, is, let's say Bitcoin breaks the 4,000 level, So we're over here now. We can, at the very least, so 4,000 level, we're expecting it to go down about 10% to 3,600. Okay, we would have that over here as well. But we have, after we break that, and usually, when Bitcoin goes down 10%, other coins go down, more, right? It can be even double or more. So, so yes, we have this, but then after this, we have, a big jump down to, and this is of course a 30% 31% target. So if Bitcoin breaks and really comes down to 3.6, yeah, we might have support here, but I think we have a pretty good chance of coming all the way down here, or at least close to here. And of course, the other thing is, like, if you're shorting and you're generally looking at the whole market being bearish, well, who are the outliers? XRP is the outlier because daily RSI is currently at 35. Bitcoin is, let's see, on the daily, we're at 29. Okay, well, it's actually 30. So XRP, in other words, if the whole market comes down, you know, the bears are going to be looking at XRP saying, well, hang on a second, that looks pretty bullish for a bear market. You know, it's 5 points higher in the RSI. I think it would have for more downside potentially than Bitcoin, even though it's currently looking more bullish because of the whole overall bearish sentiment. So, and of course, the risk to reward here is pretty solid. I mean, this is sort of the extreme scenario where we really do get this 31% reward. So we have a 2.55 there. If we were looking at a shorter term trade, we would be taking and slightly more conservative, you could say, certainly in terms of this target. We could say that would be the target, and then this would be the stop loss, but the risk reward on that, of course, is not quite as good. Now, what else are we seeing here? So if we go down to smaller time frames, because the daily is kind of just going really sideways here. So we have high, low, higher high, higher low, and now we have this lower high and higher low. So we're entering this equilibrium pattern, okay? Actually, I'm gonna just take all these lines out so that I can show it to you in real time. Right, so we have the line here. So, and actually, of course, I'm gonna start it from here because this is the peak, and then we have this low over here, and this lower high, and this higher low. So as a bear, really, the ideal entry is going to be around this level, or rather, we get a lower high over here. Let's say, for example, 0.38, and then, you know, and then we have, well, either we enter a short there, which is, you know, fairly aggressive, and then we close it with a very tight stop loss over there, or we wait for that equilibrium to get more, you know, to get tighter, and then, you know, enter on a break of the lower barrier or the lower trend line. So that's something I'm looking at as well. EOS, for example, is the opposite. So it's actually got a lower RSI than Bitcoin. Okay, so we're at 24. And the other interesting thing about EOS is that, you know, if it breaks this level, which it's been grinding on this 2.8, yeah, there's no support here at all. So this is another way of looking at it, saying, well, in theory, you should short this instead because there's no clear support whatsoever on the way down. I mean, okay, you could call this double bottom over here some sort of support, and what kind of percent would that give us? 13%, yeah. So I mean, there's some argument that would go down a whole 13%. On the other hand, the RSI here is pretty brutal, so it's at 25 now. So you would really be basically shorting it and saying, well, we expect the RSI to come all the way down to 17 again or so, and that's quite possible. I like more to kind of bet against the momentum, you could say. So here, there's slightly bullish momentum. You know, we're a little bit higher up, so it means that sorry, not momentum, but I suppose, yeah, it's kind of betting against the momentum. But right now we're stabilizing in this range, so I wouldn't really call this bullish momentum. I would call this more, yeah, just being within this range and waiting for this this slightly more bullish than Bitcoin markets to break. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling a little here, but I hope you got the general idea. And the Bitcoin stuff is really what we're most interested in. And yeah, if you have any questions or whatever, then let me know. That's it for me.